Hi, everybody. I'm Curator of Paleontology, Dr. Julie McHugh. I'm here tonight with Ms. Stephanie Lukowski, and we're going to show how geoscience is for everyone, even when they don't mean it. So it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker, Tabitha McFarland. Tabitha is a recent alumna from Colorado Mesa University, which is based here in Grand Junction, from the Biological Sciences program. She was also my student she survived being my student for about a year or two. And as much as she loves her mammals, I kept sliding fossils at her until we kind of converted her into the world of the dead mammals. So she's going to tell you about her accidental path into geoscience and show you that even if you think geoscience might not be for you, it can come and sneak attack you from the side. Because who doesn't like an office outdoors? And a lot of geoscience's offices are outdoors. So please welcome Tabitha McFarland. And Tabitha, take it away.
Before Tabitha takes it away, I'd like to ask you all to keep your microphones on mute and your webcams off. Any questions you have, you can put in the chat box and Tabitha will answer them later. So after that, with all that, I'm going to head out and leave this to Tabitha.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I want to thank the Museums of Western Colorado and Dinosaur Journey for extending this invitation to me to be able to speak with you guys today. This is Geosciences for Everyone Day, so I'm mostly going to be talking about my personal journey in science and how I got into paleontology, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about diversity in science and what people can do to be more active in science. And so I'll start with some background. So I am from Florence, Colorado, small town down south, and I graduated from Florence High School in 2016. I always knew that I wanted to be a biologist. And so I scoped the country and I figured out that I didn't want to be super far from home, but that I actually wanted a little bit of space. And so Colorado Mesa University was an ideal solution for me. There's plenty of outdoor stuff to do here, and the programs at CMU are great as well. And so in the fall of 2016, I started my journey in getting my bachelor's in biology. So, I took my basic classes and whatnot, and I really knew that I wanted to be in research. Sorry, this is going to be more of a story than anything. But so I really wanted to get into research. I knew that I wanted to be involved and I wanted to start as soon as possible. And so when I first entered college, what I thought would be passion was birds. Birds are beautiful. They're everywhere and just super cool. And so I had gone up to one of the school's professors. She's no longer at CMU, but this is Dr. Susan Longest. At the time, she was the school's ornithologist, and I had expressed that I really like birds and I'd like to, dip my hands in the pond a little bit and work with them. And she was ever so gracious as to give me this opportunity. And so my first opportunity, I was checking nest boxes for ash-throated flycatchers and mountain bluebirds. I was checking their nest boxes, looking at fledglings, the babies, how they were growing, what time were they leaving, things like that, and collecting insects to see what they were eating. And so I did that for a summer before Dr. Longest left. She left abruptly, and there was not really a lot there to tell me why. And so I still was really, really, really interested in research. And so my sophomore year, I stumbled upon Dr. Johanna Varner. And she became my academic advisor and my research advisor. And she's a wonderful mentor. Dr. Johanna Varner works on the American pika. Some of you might know these. of these animals. They're like little potatoes with legs that live at the tippy tops of mountains, pretty much. And they are related to rabbits and hares. And so my sophomore year, I started doing this work with pikas. So I started analyzing their stress hormones to figure out how climate is affecting them, pretty much. And so to do this, we would collect samples in the mountains. So we first did this at the Rocky Mountain Biological Center. This is in Gothic, Colorado. And you trek up the mountain and you set traps for the pikas. And if you catch one, then you identify it, you collect some samples from it and whatnot. Those were samples that I was collecting and taking back down to study the hormones. So I continued to do this work throughout my undergrad degree. But that following summer, after I started my pika work, I had gotten a diversity grant through the American Society of Mammalogists to attend their annual conference. This conference was in Kansas, Manhattan. And so at the time, I was still figuring out what I want to do. I knew I wanted to do research. I knew I kind of wanted to work with birds. And so going into this meeting, I really had set 2 goals for myself, which was to narrow down what I want to do. What do I want to work with? How do I want to do it? And my second goal was to really build a network and build some confidence into talking with scientists. And so ASM is a super great place. It has a lot of diversity opportunities, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But so I'd gotten this diversity grant, and I was there with other students who had also gotten the grant that were also very eager to figure out what they want and to meet people. And so you're going around and it's very hectic. There's lots of talks you're attending and your brain is just absorbing so much. But they had a symposium, which if you're not familiar with the symposium, that's just a big talk of multiple talks inside of it that's usually focused on one specific thing. And so this symposium was focused on paleobiology. And I was like, what is that? That's super cool. And so I was sitting in the symposium and these speakers are coming up and they're talking, and I was completely awestruck. I had no idea that this interdisciplinary field really existed. I was still fairly new to science in general, and I was just completely mind-blown that people do this sort of thing. And the one talk that had struck me the most was a talk on sloths. At the time, I have had little exposure before this to science, to paleontology. Everyone watches Jurassic Park and it's like dinosaurs are cool, but not a lot of people really get to see fossils necessarily or know what kind of fossils are out there. And so sitting in this talk, I was like, holy crap. There were giant sloths. And now there's smaller sloths. And people are working on how they got to be like that and finding specimens that, transitional specimens for things and asking questions about this. And I was like, this is cool. This is something I want to do. I want to learn more about it. And so after the symposium ended, I went to up to the speaker who was giving the sloth talk. His name is Greg McDonald, and he is phenomenal. And he sat with me for about 3 hours answering my questions about what is paleoecology, what is paleobiology, what do these people do? And I was, trying to figure out what I want. I'm like, this is it. This is the thing. And the cherry on top of our conversation for me was that a lot of paleontologists, paleoecologists, paleobiologists work in museums. And I was like, I like museums. I like museums a lot. And so I was really just motivated after that. I really wanted to learn things, and I really wanted to progress. I was really interested in working in a museum setting. And so following this conference, I had come back to Grand Junction, and I added a geology minor to my degree. And then I reached out to our wonderful curator, Julia McHugh, and asked about some volunteer opportunities. And so then a few weeks after that, I began volunteering at the museum. And so my first day at the museum, and majority of my volunteer work specifically, I worked on this thing we have at the museum called the bone cart. It's a hands-on station with fossils and casts of fossils for children to get to touch and learn about the fossils and really engage public with them. And it was awesome, and I loved it. I loved that I was learning things. I loved that I was teaching other people, and I loved that I got to hang out with fossils. And so following my volunteer work, I took my first paleontology class. That was Vertebrate Paleontology. And, it was a struggle for me at first because I had no prior experience in this field. But with some hard work and just really taking the time to read the material and ask questions, I survived that course and graciously got the opportunity to do an internship with the Dinosaur Museum. And so this internship was probably the most significant part of my undergrad degree in solidifying that, this is what I want to do. And so for this internship, I was digging in quarries. I was in the hot sun. I was talking to people about fossils. I was getting to meet people from all over who were coming to dig in this quarry. I was learning techniques and meeting people and absorbing other people's knowledge. And it was so much fun. And then back in the museum, I did a lot of cataloging of bones, which is just putting them into a database so that you know what's what and where it's at. And out of the entire internship, that was awesome. I loved it. The collections room for me was kind of like a library, but of bones, which is awesome. And I did a little bit of 3D printing, but not a lot. And, I also worked in the paleo lab, removing some fossils from the rocks and prepping them so that they can go into collections. And so I did this work back in 2019. And, it was a great experience, and it really did just solidify that, this is what I want to do. This is it. This was awesome. And that was my junior year of college. And so, I continued to volunteer at the museum as much as I could. But my heart was really set on paleo and on incorporating ecology, which was my biology focus, into into my future and what I want to do. And so, I was really set, and I knew that I wanted to go to graduate school, which for those who don't know what graduate school is, it's just getting a master's degree or a PhD or going on and getting a certificate after you've got your bachelor's. I knew that I really wanted to be a museum curator, and that I really needed to take time to solidify where I want to go and what I want to do. And so that'll fast forward us to today. And so I am graduated now, and I am currently applying for grad schools. Where? I can't really say because I'm applying to so many places. There's really a lot of wonderful people out there and a lot of really wonderful programs as well. And in graduate school, I want to do some paleoecology. I really want to be doing integrated museum work. And my mammal passion is lagomorphs. I love, love, love them. And for those of you who don't know the scientific name for lagomorphs, that is just rabbits, hares, and pikas. They're a really underrepresented group ecologically and most definitely evolutionary. And so I want to work on the evolution of those animals and understand a little bit about how they got to be where they are today and answer questions about what they were like in the past as well. And so that's something that I'm currently working on doing and reading a lot of papers and trying to prep myself for that next process and that next step into paleo. And so that's pretty much my story. That's, scientific journey. And it, like all people's, had some bumps here and there. And so like the majority of this part is how, this talk is going to be about diversity. And so science has not always been diverse, and it still lacks a lot of diversity in the kinds of people that are doing it. Every year that I meet people and that I got new experiences, like attending conferences, the scientific community is trying really, really hard to let people know that everyone is welcome and that there are opportunities to do that. Let's see, what else was I going to say? A really good way to get into science, if for anybody really, is to just talk to people and be involved and go to things. So go to your local museums, talk to your park rangers. When you go to the zoo and you see a zookeeper, ask them questions. Seeking volunteer work is also very important in getting a foothold into scientific community. And I'd like to mention that in diversity, I don't just mean underrepresented groups, but I also, gender orientation, sexual orientation, anything like that. Also, we're really trying to get people to come together and to make science an equal opportunity for all. And I guess I would also like to point out that in that, for those of you who are out there and watching this, you just have to be a little courageous. So for me, being a small town, I was already used to being a little bit isolated in terms of schooling and what I was doing. And so in my degree, that was also a thing that I faced. But being able to speak up and be like, ask your questions and talk to your professors and, reach out to people like Dr. McHugh, and 10 out of 10 times people are going to be willing to help you get what you want and to do what you want to do. And there's also no limitations in it, really. So for me, a big wearisome thing that I experienced is that, I am not always great at math. And so, that was something that I was worried about because science is always associated with that. But as I got older, learning that how you apply things, that actually wasn't a barrier for me. So reach out to your people, ask questions, and be confident, I would say, are really important in being inclusive and a part of diversity. Geosciences especially, they're very, very welcoming. They want you to ask questions and be involved and volunteer, and do the thing, be a part of it. Is there any questions? Any?
All right. Thanks, Tabitha. That was really interesting. And it is so great to hear your path. And as another person who loves fossil mammals and loves fossil sloths, I thought that was fantastic. So, I might be wearing the dinosaur sweater today, but I'm definitely so that was fantastic. I don't see any questions in the chat, but we'll give anyone
Okay. When I practiced this talk, it was a lot longer.
That's always
I'm just like blah, 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 as soon as I start talking. But
so are you still interested in mammals then now? You're not going to switch to Team Bird when you're in grad school? Like
No. Okay, so I am super interested in mammals. I do love them. I think my work with pikas, being in the field, holding a pika is probably one of the best feelings you will ever have in your life. Really catalyzed my affection for mammals and my desire to work with them. And so, I gave you like an overview of my experiences. But my summer of 2018, so this was the summer that I first went to my first so many times, to my first American Society of Mammalogists conference. I actually followed my passion to work with birds. I really wanted to work with birds of prey. And so I got a really wonderful opportunity working at the Pueblo Raptor Center, volunteering there. And it was an experience. When you're doing volunteering for anything like that, it's always a lot of cleaning. But that's a big deal. But I just, working with the birds, I wasn't as inspired by them as I thought I would be. I wasn't as motivated to be like, let's learn some things. Let's do some things. Leaving that experience, I just didn't have that. I appreciate the work they do. And if ever they were like, hey, come back, we need a helping hand, I would obviously come back because it was really cool. Getting to handle a bird will change your life, even if it is just a small falcon. But it was just not something that I wanted to do.
Well, that sounds like a really cool opportunity. So when you were doing your pika research, you said you were taking samples and looking at their hormones. So were you taking blood samples or urine samples? Like, what did you have to do? Like, what? I want the nitty gritty.
The nitty gritty. Okay. All right. So we'll start with the stress hormones. So I actually extract the stress hormones from pika poop. I am a poop lady. But I should mention that if poop could be cute, that they would have the cutest poops. They're just tiny itty bitty balls, and they don't really stink. We have for the pika work, we have collaborators in Alaska, and so we analyze their samples. We also have a few other collaborators at other universities, and so when we trap, we also collect blood samples if it's there, pretty much. So, we tag them so that we have an identification. So we tag them if we have identification with colors, and that's how you get a tissue sample. And sometimes when you're getting that tissue sample, there will be blood, so you collect that too. We also did collect urine. Fortunately, pika urine isn't as policing as pika poop. No. It's as stinky as any other animals. But, we collect first samples, and then we would take notes on their body conditions. So were they a little, were they a little chunky? Did they seem a little underweight? You check their hydration by lifting their skin and seeing the elasticity. So it's real elastic, you're hydrated. And if it's not elastic, then you're not hydrated. It's the same with our skin, pretty much. The more elastic, the more hydrated you are. It's a little harder to see on us, but the same concept.
Oh, wow. So what did you find in terms of like your research? Like, did you find, were they stressed out? Were they doing well? You were up on Grand Mesa, right? So how are our pika grads doing?
So I did 2 projects. So I did one project on the Grand Mesa and one in the Lasalle Mountains. And so the pikas on the Grand Mesa, we'll start with those guys first. There's a lot going on up there. We'll start with that. So it's really hard to collect fecal samples because pikas make hay piles. And so they don't hibernate in the winter. And so in the spring and summer, they cache all their food into these hay piles, and that's what they eat in the winter. And lagomorphs in particular like to poop and eat at the same time. They're a dual function kind of thing. And so you first have to find, so in the Grand Mesa, we were checking latrines, which latrine is just a place where you like to poop again and again and again, pretty much. And they can be difficult to find. And so we were collecting samples from those. And so for that project, we didn't know who we were collecting from. We just knew that it was, that's poop. For that, we found some variation in stress. Some seemed to be super, super stressed, and some not at all. A big thing with this is because they were latrines and not individuals, it's hard to say if their latrine wasn't being used by another individual. And so things like territory intrusion can occur. And that's because pikas are kleptoparasitic, which means that they like to steal food. And in doing so, sometimes you might poop in your neighbor's yard, pretty much.
I'm gonna look at it in a whole new way. That's fantastic.
And so, so because our sample size was moderate and it was from latrines and not individuals themselves, my numbers were everywhere. And so the variation is most likely, I think, caused by territory intrusion. But I'd really have to know more about that. Take more samples in order to really figure out what was going on. And then, so the Lasalle Mountains, Huh?
Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Please tell us about the Lasalle Mountains.
So Lasalle Mountains, first of all, so beautiful. Great. I also died on the backpacking trip up that mountain. I've never been so tired in my life. I got to the campsite and passed out. I was done. But so my work in the LaSalles, I was trying to understand predictors of climate change in individual pikas. And so for this project, I was only collecting scat from the pikas themselves. So this was complicated because this means that I had to trap individuals. I had to, this was an ongoing project in the way of marking individuals and understanding the population density up there. And so I had to try to find out, were individuals from last year still around? If so, can I get them? Can I get their poop? Can I get new individuals? Can I get their poop? And pikas, they're tempestuous animals, but they're not always easy to get. And so when we trap them, we use a little standard animal trap. We then put rocks around it, and they have to be sealed pretty tight so that a weasel can't get to the pika through the trap or torment them or anything like that, since weasels are one of the pika's biggest predators. And then we make what we like to call Pika Salad. So you go out and you pick some grass and some flowers and you make it look pretty, shake it up in a bag, and you put it in there and you hope that they take it pretty much. Like I said, they're kleptoparasitic, so most of the time if there's going to be something out there laying there, they're going to want to get it. And so Sessom Traps, unfortunately, we did not catch very many individuals. We caught about 16 individuals, I believe, and only a few of them were from the previous year. And so 16 individuals is great. We caught 7 of them in one day, and it was the most hectic day. But the problem with only 16 individuals is the really small sample size. And so because of the small sample size, I really wasn't able to test a lot of the hypotheses that I wanted. Like, what are they eating? What's the microclimate? And so I had also placed temperature sensors up there. There are sensors that were there the year before also. So there was a lot of temperature data. And a lot of the sensors had failed. And so I really wasn't able to test anything with microclimate, which is really hard when it comes to testing predictors of climate. The only thing that I found with this project was that there was a positive correlation between vegetation and stress levels. So pretty much the more food availability, the less stressed, which is going to make sense because, pikas are the most stressed in the spring, summer, fall, because they're trying to get as much food. But if there's lots of food, then I can just chill back and leisurely go and make my trip to get food. And so that would have been a really cool project to continue to do if I was able, in the sense that, there's still a lot of unanswered questions about that population of pikas.
Well, now you'll be able to look further back in time and see what pikas and their relatives were doing when you're in grad school.
Yes.
You'll be able to answer those questions and see how changing environments over time may have affected them and be able to make predictions about what might happen to current populations.
Yes.
Although the last time I went hiking up on the mesa, I saw the fattest pika I've ever seen. So it made me very so hopefully the population up there is doing well. I just want to remind everyone, if you do have any questions, please write them in the chat. Tabitha will be happy to answer them. If you want to hear more about pika poop, because I thought that was fascinating, I had no idea, or anything else. Oh, it sounds like Dr. McHugh has a question for you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hey.
Hi.
So, you're figuring out which individuals were left from the year before versus new ones. Are you guys tagging them, or did you have other markers that you could identify individual pika with up in the Lasalles?
We were marking them. Okay. So they had little ear tags. And so they're all pretty cute. And so we used different colors. So it'd be like blue, it'd go right to left. So it'd be like blue, green, white. And so that's how we were tagging them. So really we would, a lot of my time in the Lasalles was sitting on a rock with binoculars looking. If we trapped an individual from the previous year, that was great, but, not likely, very difficult to do. A lot of it was like, oh, I seen this pika. Let's see if we can set a trap up there, get a hold of them.
Cool. So, let's see here. Do we have any questions in the chat for you? Did you see any sort of like individual variation in the size of poop between the pika? Like, were the bigger pika making bigger poop, or were they all kind of about the same size?
So they're typically all about the same size. So pika poop is like the size of like a BB pellet.
Okay.
It's pretty tiny. It's pretty much a one for all. We did get really lucky in the fact that we caught a juvenile. So it's not very often that you catch juveniles. Wherever mom has them, that's kind of typically where they stay for a bit. it was the cutest pika I've ever seen. It was so tiny. So tiny. And its poos were pretty tiny. They were a little smaller, but, you know, not super significantly smaller.
Cool. Well, I have one more question before you take it away from me. So you were collecting some tissue samples and some blood samples for your collaborators at different labs, different universities. Were you guys doing any sort of genetic sequencing of the pika? Or has that already been done? Has somebody already sequenced the entire pika genome? Do you know?
I do not know. I know that there was another student in Dr. Varner's lab that was doing some genome. I think she was trying to. So pikas are really hard to sex. Very, very hard to sex. And this student was trying to do that genomically.
Okay.
I don't know a lot about her work, and I don't know if there's been a lot of stuff on them and their genetics, unfortunately.
Okay.
I had another question. So I also think giant sloths are amazing.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering why you decided to not go the giant sloth route. Like, did you know we have the highest the highest altitude record of Jefferson's ground sloth here in Colorado, up in Snowmass? So like there are sloths in Colorado. Amazing.
So sloths are so cool. I love a good sloth. I guess I want to work on small mammals. Big is great, you know, and why things are big is still a question that everyone's like, why the heck was this thing so big? But I feel like the small guys are just overlooked. No one cares about the small guys. They're just small. And so lagomorphs in general, everyone knows what a rabbit is, but no one really knows what they do, how they live. You know, most people associate rabbits with their reproduction. And there's not really anything on their evolution, like at all, which is wild because rabbits are literally almost everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I actually studied smaller things when I was in grad school, so I can totally relate, but sloths are pretty awesome. So I agree with you.
Sloths are so awesome. And I think that
I can vouch for the high number. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I can personally vouch for the high numbers of rabbit teeth in the record. There's plenty of them. They're everywhere.
And they've been around since the Eocene, so you have plenty of time and space to look at for them.
Yeah. That's actually two of the questions that I'm interested in is how diet in rabbits has changed over time using isotopes and the evolution of the double incisor, which I know that there's people working on that, but no one knows. So I'm like, that's going to be me. I'm going to find out.
All right, we've got a question in the chat. So let's see. So Gavin would like to know, he says he's sorry, but he's late to the game, and he's sorry if you cover this, but how far back do pikas go, and where do they first appear?
Evolutionary. I do not know off the top of my head pika evolution. That's not something that I have dabbled a lot in. Let me think.
And I'd like to remind everyone to just keep your cameras off and your voice on mute, because this is a video that's being recorded, will be sent out to the schools. We want to focus on Tabitha here. So, oh man, now Gavin's asking me how far back do pikas go. Oh boy, that's a really good question, Gavin. I assume they go. Okatonids and lagomorphs kind of first appear in the Eocene, but I don't know about pikas proper. But thank you for putting me on the hook there. So let's see, he's typing. Maybe he has another.
Double incisors.
Ah, yes. Multituberculates do.
Yeah, so multituberculates were kind of occupying the rodent niche before there were rodents, but they also had multiple rows of incisors. So it might be a cool comparison to compare these weird early, almost a glider, but really not a glider. The cute and fuzzy, long-eared and short-eared lagomorphs that perfected.
It would be cool. I am one of the people that I'm talking to for grad school actually does work on multituberculates, so
cool.
That could be a segue into getting into more what I want to look at.
Who are you talking to who's working on multis? Is it Anne?
Greg Wilson Mantilla.
Oh, Greg Wilson. Okay.
Well, I think you also offered some really good advice in terms of like talking to people. I know I'm a first generation college grad, and I wish somebody had given me that advice, that it is really important for anyone who might be listening. If you are looking to go into grad school, or even if you just want to volunteer, if you're retired and you want to like pursue a second passion, talking to us at the museums is a great way to get your foot in the door and meet people who are doing research, and also just learning what's going on in the world of science. So I think that was really fantastic advice. And if nobody else in the chat has any questions, I think we can end this. So thank you so much, Tabitha, for talking about your path paleo and pikas. I learned so much. So thank you. And thank you all for attending our talk. So we have, just for everyone else to know, we have one more talk in our science week. That'll be on Saturday the 17th, same time at 5:30. So that day in our science week is International Archaeology Day, and we have Zebulon Miracle, who will be talking about rock art in the Colorado Plateau, so don't miss that. Also, if you're in the area, we have one spot left on our Geologic Map Day talk with BLM geologist Eric Eckberg. So make sure you sign up on our website, because just one more. And other than that, thank you so much, Tabitha, for being here with us and telling us about how you came into geoscience. And thank you all for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and giving me this opportunity to share my experiences with other people.
Well, we wish you the best of luck in grad school, and I know I can say for sure that I miss having you here in the museum. I
miss it too. I miss the bones.
And Past Perfect misses you too.
All right, well, thank you everyone, and hopefully we'll see everybody on Saturday.